For the past few years, we've been making a single change on the homepages across almost all of our e-commerce clients. Now, every time it's almost the same test, it's almost the same change, it's almost the same concept, but the execution is entirely different. It's custom to each and every brand. And the results, well, they're pretty interesting. For example, take a look at this. For one beauty brand, we were able to increase their monthly revenue by over $63,000 a month. And that was only due to this homepage optimization test. Now, for a fragrance brand, we were able to increase conversion rate by 5%, which led to an almost $28,000 a month in additional revenue. And then for a fashion and apparel brand, it was almost $84,000 a month in additional revenue generated through this almost 7% increase in conversion rate generated by this homepage test. Now, at this point, you're probably wondering, well, what is that change? What is that test? Well, here's the deal. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly how to find that test. And I'm going to show you real life examples of how that test has been executed across multiple brands, good and bad examples. But I'm not going to give you, however, a copy and paste, do this, do that, copy what everyone else is doing type of thing. Because this test requires a little bit of digging. But it doesn't necessarily require you to take more than an hour of your time to find this data. And then after that, well, you just got to test. So what is this test? Well, ultimately, the whole idea behind this is to optimize your homepage to send people to the best path to purchase. I know the idea is pretty simple. But this idea, combined with a little bit of research, makes the difference between running a test that could generate 60 grand additional revenue or waste 3 weeks of your time, right? The research behind this test is what makes it so powerful. And you're going to learn right now how to do this step by step. So let's first look into what makes a good homepage. Well, here's the deal. The goal of the homepage, first and foremost, a lot of brands get it completely wrong. It is not to just display everything and anything about your brand. Most brands overcomplicate their homepage. They put everything they don't know where to put. And, well, it lacks strategy and it ultimately does not lead to conversions. Now, the goal of the homepage is to send people on their best path to purchase. And yes, you can talk a bit about your brand. You can talk about the origin story. You can communicate value propositions. But, if you care about performance, right, there is still a strategy that your homepage should follow in order to convert. The first step in doing that is, well, to identify the most profitable path, right? What should you put on your homepage, or how do you send those people to the next pages is what we're going to cover in just a couple seconds or in a couple minutes. But first, you need to understand, what are those potential contenders? What are some of those pages where if people are sent to, they're going to perform better than average? Now, there are two ways of doing this. One way is specifically for multi-SKU or multi-category stores, right? So if you sell a lot of products, there's multiple ways of doing it for that. Now, if you do sell, however, just a single product, if you're a single product or just a couple products on your store, there's a different strategy for this, and we're going to get into it as well in just a few minutes. But first, let's go through the different ways of identifying the most profitable path to purchase for brands that have a lot of products. You can do this through Google Analytics, you can do this through Shopify Analytics, and also through heatmap.com. Now, at SplitBase, we actually use all three. You don't necessarily need to, but it's ideal. And when it comes to Google Analytics, there's about 100 different ways of getting to this outcome. Here are just some of my 3 favorite ways of doing it. At SplitBase, we actually prefer to export this data through BigQuery and through Looker and visualize the data a bit better, and so it's a bit more flexible. But for simplicity's sake, today, what you're going to do is you're going to open Google Analytics. Then you're going to go in the Explore section. And ultimately, what you're trying to get from what I'm going to show you is what pages, which products, which collection pages actually leads to highest conversion rate, average order value, or ultimately revenue per user. So what you'll want to do is go to the Explore reports and create a free form report. Now, the next thing is you're going to create a segment. What you want to see is you want to see which pages do visitors visit that correlates with a higher conversion rate. So take, for example, your most important collection pages and create a new segment for each of those collection pages. So for example, it's going to be user visited page path within that session. And that page path should be, that first collection page. And then you repeat with another collection page in a different segment, and so on. What that's going to give you ultimately is a list looking similarly to this of your collection pages and their performance. Now, if you've selected revenue per user or revenue per session or conversion rate, which ultimately is the key event rate, you will be able to compare each of those pages and see which one leads to highest performance. So that's step number one. Now, if you want to see which products typically convert best, right? Because how many, your most popular products are not always the ones that convert best. So you want to get that data. To get that data, you're going to take a very similar approach. So you're going to go to the Explore tab, create a freeform report. Then you're going to add the dimension called item name, right? So that's going to allow you to list your products. And then you're going to add two metrics, total sessions and session key event rate. Once you generate that report, you're going to be able to compare the conversion rate for each of your products. Now, keep in mind in Google Analytics and GA4, the conversion rate is called the session key event rate. I know it's a bit confusing, and there is a big danger here. If your key event isn't properly set up, it may roll into the session key event a bunch of other events. So it is very important before you do this that you make sure that the purchasing event, the purchase, is the session key event, or I should say the key event. So make sure that is set up properly. Then a third way, and ultimately, you should get a report that looks exactly like this. Now, the third way of doing it is you can go to Explore. You can create a freeform report. Again, add a dimension called landing page, and then add metrics, total sessions, and once again, session key event rate. So ultimately, you're doing the exact same thing. You're just replacing the dimension. And instead of looking at items, you're looking at landing pages. So with those three different analyses, the first one should give you which pages or which collection pages that customers visit that tends to correlate with better performance. The second one will give you which items do you sell that tends to convert best. And the third one is which landing page do people land on that then converts best. Sometimes for this last one good thing to do is to just look at landing pages but filter for collection pages. So if you're sending traffic to your collection pages, look at which collection page, when used as a landing page, performs best. So it's going to give you an extra dimension to the data. Now, ultimately, there is one more piece of advice in order to avoid skewing your data that is very, very important. And it's to look at these reports through the lens of your different devices, so mobile and desktop, but also to look at these through the lens of different channels, because your paid traffic may be your most important channel and where you're putting the most money. And for you, that's really the traffic you're trying to improve performance for. But you may also be getting a lot of organic traffic that converts really well. And if you're getting quite a high volume of other traffic sources, it could skew the performance that you're seeing here. So, one good tip is to look, for example, at each of those through a filter of paid social traffic only or paid search traffic only, and so on. Now, this is the first step. That should give you an idea of what are your most profitable or at least best converting pages and products. Now, that's with Google Analytics. Step number 2 is to use Shopify Analytics. I've given you quite a bit of a shortcut here. You can open Shopify Sidekick and then just paste this prompt. And what it's going to do is it will extract which products, when it's the first purchase made by a new customer, leads to the highest lifetime value over time. Now, Google Analytics, here will give you just a general overview of which products perform better from a behavioral standpoint. My goal with Shopify Analytics is not to understand the conversion rate, because that's not really a number that we can get here. But my goal with Shopify Analytics is to understand which product out of all my products, when purchased as the first product for a new customer, will lead to the highest repeat customer rate and highest lifetime value, right? So sometimes what you want to do is you want to find those products, your golden products that you'll want to promote on the homepage, the products or the categories that are most important to promote on, the homepages or even on the landing pages for your paid traffic, will likely be at the intersection of high performer, high conversion rate, but also high lifetime value, high repeat customer rate. So that's why Shopify Analytics plays a very key role here. And that's why we use it along Google Analytics to really get a clear picture of those best path to purchase. Now, the third way, and this is very similar to Google Analytics, is if you have an heatmap.com account, Heatmap can correlate clicks on elements with conversion rate and revenue per click and purchases at the end of the day. So if you're trying to optimize your homepage, for example, you could open your homepage heat map and look at which products and collection pages that you've got displayed on there that generally leads to the higher revenue per click. Do the same with your shop all collection page to see if there's any hidden gems, and do the same with individual collection pages to see if there's any specific product that, maybe they're not at the top, but there's quite a bit of people clicking on those, and it does lead to a high revenue per click, and people do convert well when they click on those. So once you've got that, you're going to get a full picture. What type of products, do people convert best on? Which specific products people convert best with? And which ones of those products or product categories leads the highest lifetime value and repeat customer rate, which will, hopefully set you up for a better future. So that is how to get your best path to purchase, and the path being product pages or collection pages. And this is how to do this if you have multiple SKUs, products on your store. And we're going to get to specific examples of what to do with that data in just a moment. But quickly, if you're a single product brand, it's a bit more okay here to treat your homepage as a landing page, right? If you sell multiple products, you have hundreds of SKUs, well, you can't just focus on a single product on your homepage, and this is why we're going through this step. But if, you sell, an air purifier, for example, or some type of appliance, or, some type of tech product, follow your homepage should follow a general structure that is similar to a hero type landing page. What that means is you're going to want to open with, what am I buying? Right? You'll want to have a clear value proposition that's understood by customers right away. You'll also want to make sure that within your hero section, customers can answer the question, is this for me? Right? So you want to create relatability and make sure that it's clear who your product is for through both copy and imagery. Now, what you're likely going to see on LinkedIn, on Twitter, shared on socials are all these copycat hero sections where you need to have like this full on, unique value proposition headline, a subheadline that explains it, some trust badges. And to a certain extent, that's what I recommend too. But sometimes there's an intersection where brands have this type of brand aura and this product where a lot can be communicated through imagery alone. And I'm talking here specifically with fashion brands where you don't necessarily have a unique value proposition other than, the look and the feel and the aura you're giving through your products. So now I know this gets a bit complicated here, but if you don't want to have too much text, sometimes there is a way to do this. It's a little harder, but through imagery. Now, the next section on the homepage, if you sell a single product, should be, why should I care? Right? So this is where you address the pain points, the outcomes, and the benefits that customers care about. This is also where you want to explain, depending on the complexity of your product, maybe you can even skip that entirely. But you want to explain what I like to call your unique mechanism. What happens, what process, what systems, what thing makes your product better than others and makes your product the thing that will help me achieve the promised result. Then, of course, you should also answer, why should I trust you? And this doesn't necessarily need to be at a specific area on the page, lower down the page. It should be in general. You want to make sure that trust, social proof, results, or even trust through, professional design of the brand. You need to make sure that that is covered. And then finally, right, you versus competitors or you versus alternatives. That might be something that you need to address. Now, it depends on the brand. There are some brands that I know of that want to define their own categories, and they don't want to compare themselves to any competitors because they see themselves as an entirely different category. However, some other brands would benefit quite a bit from a comparison chart or some sort of comparison between themselves and the alternatives. And finally, how do I buy, right? So you'll want a clear offer, an irresistible offer, I call it, a great entry offer. And this is the buy box, right? You'll want to address all those objections and make sure that it's easy for people to buy. Now, obviously, I've placed it here at the bottom. It doesn't need to be. Actually, in most recent months, we've seen buy boxes on landing pages, if you sell a single product, perform a little better when they're higher up on the page. But, I can't prescribe without a diagnosis. I don't have access to your data. So this is something you have to test on your own. Now, so this is how you find the best path to purchase and what to do depending on what type of brand you run. So let's talk about now, what do you do next? Now, you have a list of collection pages that seems to perform really well. You have a list of products that seems to perform really well. What should you do on the homepage to actually get good results using this data? Well, let's look at a few examples. So now keep in mind, if you want to have access to this FigJam, including the exact prompt that we're using to get our Shopify data, and full look at those examples, just make sure to click the link in the video description below, and you'll have email access to this FigJam, and you'll be able to consult this on your own time. Now, on the examples, there are some examples here that are from some clients, not clients that I've mentioned here, but other clients that had similar successes with this, and other brands from around the internet. For example, let's look at path to purchase. One of the ways to address this through an A/B test that's been really, really highly successful for a lot of our clients have been to display the best performing categories directly on the homepage. This can be done in so many ways, right? So for example, here, Vitally, this jewelry brand, is displaying, those products here in a small line directly under the hero. Diff Eyewear, well, the product is different. Here, for example, you have shop sunglasses by frame shape. Now, they also could have said shop by style, shop by type of glasses because they sell prescriptions, sunglasses, and so on. But ultimately, we've got shop by frame shape. Now, I can guarantee you, because Diff was a client, for about 4 years, this is part of our case study on our website. And this is something that we've tested. Shopping by frame shape is not a coincidence. It is a direct result of the data that we found by doing this quick analysis that I walked you through earlier. Now, another way on mobile, for example, you've likely seen those type of Instagram story navigation bars pop all over. Now, this has been pretty popular. When we first tested this with Diff, it was actually, I think, the first website I'd ever seen with this type of nav bar. My theory is that those work pretty well because it simplifies the choice. Again, it sends people to some of the best path to purchase. And for Diff specifically, it did lead to a pretty significant increase in conversion rate. So those are a couple ways that you can do that. Now, don't think or assume from this video that it is the only way to, use your best path to purchase. It's not just about categories. For example, Dr Squatch, who we've built their conversion optimization program for 5 years, right? A big focus directly under the hero on the homepage are the bundles, right? Well, why those bundles? Why not individual products? Why not product categories? Well, the reality is no one has the answer until you test it. No one at Dr. Squatch knows what's the best thing to put on the homepage until they test it. But if you do the quick research that I've shown you earlier, this one, well, you're able to come up with multiple different hypotheses, multiple different solutions, iterations on how you can make your homepage more relevant to customers and send people to the best path to purchase. And very often for many brands, right, having bundles that have a high conversion rate, that have a high lifetime value is a good way to, introduce people to the brand. Now, there's also even an advanced level to this where you can eventually segment, new customers versus returning customers. And maybe new customers will have some entry bundles or starter kits that will perform best versus the returning customers might perform best if you display different refills, right? So that's another layer of data and digging that you can go through using your analytics. And then it's another layer of testing and personalization that's also doable. And that's something that we do regularly for our clients at SplitBase. Now, another example that I thought was pretty neat is obviously, right, it doesn't need to be all about just the categories or the displays, but one of the main things, or one of the top things people click on when they land on the homepage is the navigation bar. So your nav bar is more important than a lot of people think because, for many sites, we're seeing between 20 and almost 80% of visitors who are landing and interacting with the homepage, they end up clicking on the nav bar. And if your nav bar is not structured and organized in a way that's optimal for your profitability and performance, you're going to be losing big. How do you organize your nav bar? Well, the answer is pretty simple. You just do this simple research that I've shown you earlier. Now, there's also a lot of brands, for example, that have a single button on their homepage. Right? Transparent Labs, a brand we've been working with for years. And, this new website was actually entirely built by us at SplitBase. And it led to performance increases almost across every single KPI. Now, there was also a lot of options here. Do we display shop supplements? Do we display shop by quiz? Do we send people to other specific areas within the supplement categories? Right? Those were all questions that we were faced with. But it was also something that we were able to test quite a bit using data. Now, same thing with Riddle, for example, right? A sample kit. And this is another website that we've built and that we've been optimizing for a while. But ultimately, how and where do you send people to? you can also play with those buttons in order to determine the best path to purchase. Now, obviously, that's not the only way of making a homepage convert well. You can't just have your best performing product and perform well. I do still think there needs to be a level of brand, and trust that is also communicated. Now, here's a couple ways to do this, right? Obviously, if you've got a promotion, like here in my screenshot of Diff, right? If you've got a promotion, you want to make sure that's advertised. Don't hide it. Same thing with Vitaly here. Now, you also want to have some trust factors. So, Riddle Oil here, we are going heavy with 5-star reviews, with the amount of members. Transparent Labs, we're showing the amount of active subscribers instead. And we're showing some of the most important things that customers care about as discovered through conversion research surveys that we did for the brand. Now, it doesn't need to be all about UVP icons or so on, but a great example I found here was Milk Makeup, where their homepage, you've got the hero, and then you've got award-winning clean beauty introducing some of their best sellers, or who knows, maybe a tailored selection of products based on what performs best for them. But the award-winning clean beauty is just a very subtle way here to talk about your unique value proposition, without necessarily having to create an entire section for it. And if you keep scrolling here, well, you eventually also get in between sections to a line of text that also anchors their value proposition. Here, our product philosophy is simple. We start with good ingredients, then turn those into effective formulas. Easy to use makeup that's clean, vegan, and cruelty-free, always. So this is a way, right, that a brand can keep the aura of their brand. This looks very branded. It looks very professional. It looks very clean and modern. But it also doesn't look like every other brand on the internet. So this is a great way of doing this. Now, let's look at here Manduka, also a brand that we've worked with, right? You've got imagery that very much communicates who they're for, people who do yoga, right? You've got, however, collections here, and then you've got bestsellers, and then you've got a featured collection. Now, keep in mind that most people on the homepage barely even get to the bottom. And this is where, like, at this point, I think it's kind of fine if there's arguments within the brand to like display certain elements. The bottom 50% of your homepage isn't going to be seen a ton. Most people will navigate away way before that. And that's where maybe you can display, those news articles or some of the blog content. But you need to make sure that at least the first 50% of the page is very much optimized to send people on the best performing path to purchase. Now, what if, however, you are a single product brand? Well, I've opened a couple examples here. One example that I like quite a bit is here, Boxu, that sells subscription boxes with Japanese snacks, right? This is it's got a great imagery of what people are looking for, what the brand provides. Premium snack subscription. It is very clear what this is. Discover Japan through snacks. Very clear unique value proposition. And then what is it? Authentic Japanese snacks delivered to you monthly from Japan. Subscribe now. Right? So there is a very clear call to action. There is a very clear unique value proposition. Then, well, what makes us different? Right? Then they talk about this. Then they build the trust. Then they show exactly how it works. And you can see that this landing page is pretty much built exactly following the structure that I described. It has brand elements, but it also, has all the basics that a landing page should contain. Now, there is a process. That's a video for another day. And actually, there is a couple of videos about this on our YouTube channel. But if you want to understand exactly what type of content, what to write on your homepage here when you're a single product brand, the key is really to do qualitative research. You need to find the patterns, the voice patterns, what people are saying, what people are thinking, that leads to purchase or that leads to abandonment. And this research is done through surveys, polls, review mining, and so on. So go on the YouTube channel, on our YouTube channel, and look at the videos talking about our full business blueprint or how to find $1 million A/B test ideas, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Here, 8 Sleep, another great example. It really opens up here with the brand, the product. It has a couple products, of course, but if their goal is new customer acquisition, it leads with their leading product that new customers will likely want to buy. And ultimately, you've got all the information there. Now, another example here, for example, is Levain Bakery, where this one is slightly different. They have a couple different products, but all within the same category, right? So the trick here is really just to find, okay, out of the flavors, out of the products that we have, which one are best to display directly on the homepage. And again, this can be done through the exact research process that I've walked you through earlier. Now, I want to wrap this up with maybe one example that I thought was not so good, right? So if you look at this homepage for Ollie, it's actually nothing about it is about their products, right? Here, open enrollment for Ollie rewards, scan store receipts, play games. Like, you read this and you're like, what is this brand about? You don't know it's a supplement brand. It could be a gummy brand for all that matters, right? This only works with a very small specific segment of customers that really knows about the brand. So that is not a good way to go about it, especially if your goal is to convert new customers and grow your customer base. Now, it gets worse because as you keep scrolling, we've got our stories. I still don't have a clear idea of who this brand is, what they sell, who it's for, what type of needs they cater to. And finally, when I scroll down, I'm seeing some top sellers. But I still have no idea why this brand is better than others. And, most people buying supplements, for example, are just like buyers from beauty brands often. They're looking for a product that will help them with a specific goal, with a specific concern, with a specific symptom. And while their, nav bar here has a shop by benefit, shop by ingredient, none of this is even displayed on the homepage. It's kind of hard to navigate to, the best performing categories. Now, I don't have access to their data. I don't know what their best performing categories are, but I'd be ready to bet that they have some benefits, for example, or some concerns that people are looking to buy for that leads to high conversion rates that are very high performing that are simply not displayed here. So, same thing with skincare. Skincare is very often symptom or concern driven. And very often, those categories perform well. Now, again, I'm not telling you if you're a skincare or beauty brand, you need to display the concerns on your homepage, because maybe for your brand, that's not the most important thing. But if you do this quick research, you will be able to know exactly what is most profitable, which pages and which product leads to the most revenue for your brand. And based on that, then you can come up with multiple test ideas, multiple ways of addressing that on the homepage. You'll probably have dozens, if not more, test ideas just using these couple pieces of data. And one of those test ideas, likely not all of them, but likely one or two or a couple of those test ideas could lead to massive wins like I've shown earlier. Now, this is how to build a high converting homepage for e-commerce. It's a slightly different way than what you might have heard or seen before, but this is a proven way from over a decade of experience testing and optimizing homepages for 8 and 9-figure e-commerce brands here at SplitBase. Now, again, if you want to get access to this file here, this Fig Jam, including all examples and the the sidekick prompt, just click on the link in the description below and you'll get totally free access to this. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe. I'm Raphael, and see you in the next video.